Hey, it's Sharon from Shut Up Sharon. This morning I had the opportunity to participate in an interview concerning women in leadership. The people of Israel over and over forgot. We see reminders in the Bible of God telling them to remember who you are. Remember where you've came from. Remember that I brought you up out of Egypt. Remember that I saved you. Remember that I split the waters. And we see in the Jewish faith tradition a lot of storytelling that is all about the remembering who they are. And so when I get to sit down and share pieces of my story, I'm always blessed because I get to remember the story of my life. It hasn't all been unicorns, Skittles, and rainbows. There's been some pretty hard, painful experiences in the midst of my story. There have been people who have spoke words of life and people who have spoke words of death. There have been people who, at a very important time in my life, more than they probably ever realized or will ever know, stepped in and took this broken, frail, well, I don't know that I'm frail, but took this broken person and just loved me. They came alongside me and they gave me jobs. They believed in me. They embraced my call. And they gave a portion of their life to nurture God in me. We as people, as women, especially women who are living in a male-dominated occupation, we live in this space of this call, and it's never, ever, ever easy. There are people who have opinions and people who want to judge. And this doesn't just come from other pastors or leaders, but it comes from people in the church, people who want to say, well, your heels are too high, or your hair's too long, or your dress is too short, or wow, you're wearing pants. There's just these things that we go through that add to the pain and to the struggle. But in our pain and in our struggle, we have an opportunity for growth. We have an opportunity to become more and more of who God has called us to be. The way that I get through the pain and the struggling is, of course, one, to lean into God, right? Like, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Absolutely. I have watched him literally part the waters in my life and make a way. But I also have to do a lot of self-talk to want to get up and go at it again. So what does that self-talk look like for me? Sometimes I have to look in the mirror and say, no, Sharon, what you see isn't ugly, it's beautiful. No, Sharon, what just happened wasn't about you, it was about them. But the most effective self-talk that I have found is to stand in front of my mirror and say, Sharon, you are a child of God. You are a daughter of the Most High King. That makes you worthy. That makes you valuable. That makes you a contributor to this thing called life. I've had to sit in front of the mirror at the hardest of times and force myself to remember who I am, and to remember whose I am, and to remember the call that he has placed on my life, to remember the journey. Hard, difficult, painful, but also sacred and holy. Also something that changed me, that changed my family, that changed the world for the better. The God of the universe has called me to be who I am. And the best thing I can do, instead of fighting the naysayers, instead of warding off the negativity, instead of attempting to somehow make
them accept me instead of trying to please everyone. The best thing I can do is embrace who God has called me to be, to run passionately after that call, and let God sort it out. So if you are struggling today with who you are, with who God has called you to be, with the ways in which you've been held back, pushed down, I encourage you to put your big girl panties on. There is a promise of God for you. God didn't call you to something that He isn't going to pull you through. God didn't bring you this far for you to not remember His faithfulness. Keep pushing. Keep going. Keep remembering who you are. Keep remembering whose you are. Keep that call in front of you. And I promise you that if you live into the call of God in your life, I promise you, they'll see it. They may not acknowledge it. They may not affirm it, but they will be left to wrestle with the sight of God in and through you. Keep going, girl. Keep pressing. God's promise is true, and you will make it through.